According to the Irish Whiskey Association, combined sales of Irish whiskey are growing at a rate of 250,000 bottles a week. This year will be the first year in over 100 years that Irish whiskey sales globally will top 10 million cases. 90 million litres of whiskey will flow down the throats of lucky drinkers around the world. That's enough whiskey to, well, to have a good time. And in this video, we're going to explore the reasons behind this growth. I'm Barry Chandler. Welcome to episode number 9 of Stories and Sips, slowly chipping away at the wall that is bourbon and scotch so that Irish can take its rightful place as the most demanded whiskey in the world. Beside me is the lovely Powers signature release single pot still Irish whiskey, and this is the first sip I've had of this in more than 2 years. I can't get it in Ohio, but it's definitely worth a drive elsewhere. 4 years ago, Ireland had just 4 distilleries producing whiskey. Today there are 18, and it's expected that there'll be 30 by 2020, all distilling the world's fastest growing spirit. So is it the growth in the number of distilleries that's responsible for the increased global demand, or are they the product? The answer is a little bit of both, really. See, one distillery has been producing the liquid that is responsible for 85% of Irish whiskey sales around the world, and that's Midleton Distillery, with their old reliable Jameson accounting for 65% of all Irish whiskey sold last year. And then of course you've got Tullamore Dew and Paddy. Though not owned by Irish distillers, their liquid is also produced currently at Midleton. But Midleton and other distilleries are only producing what they are relatively sure they'll sell, and their supply is designed to meet demand. So what has generated this demand? Well, I've got 5 suggestions for the growth. Reason number 1, the French. The French and Irish might have a great rugby rivalry, but when it comes to drinks, there's more alignment than competition. Indeed, it was the French drinks giant Pernod Ricard's purchase of Irish distillers in the 1980s that began the French-Irish liquid love affair. Recognizing the global potential of Jameson, they've invested heavily in its growth, its distribution, its brand. I mean, there was a time when Jameson sold more whiskey in Ireland than anywhere else, but that's no longer the case, with a global audience now familiar with the green sleeve of this iconic whiskey. And together with their investment in the Jameson brand, significant investment in the distillery in Midleton has allowed them for increases in quality, efficiency, and of course quantity. Now, Pernod Ricard is a house of brands, and they believe in the creation of experiences around their brands. 30 years ago, an Irish whiskey experience in Ireland might have meant a night at the Long Hall in Dublin. But today it's about purpose-built visitor centres and experiences designed to connect visitors with the history, the heritage and the brand attributes beyond bottle alone. And you Americans thought the French just gave us fries. Oh, and the Statue of Liberty, and great wine, and Gerard Depardieu. Well, you get the idea. Reason number 2. Ireland, the brand. I can't open my mouth in Ohio without somebody picking up on the accent and wanting to have a chat about their ancestry, that one time they visited the cliffs of Moher, or isn't it great that Ireland legalised gay marriage? Had I opened my mouth in America 100 years ago, I'd have been turfed out on the street with the dogs. Such was the animosity towards the drunken Irish at the time. And those days are gone, thankfully, and today we, the Irish, are lauded around the world. There are few more welcome passports to have than the Irish one. And Ireland has come to represent so much more than our Hollywood stereotype. We might not dye our rivers green on St. Patrick's Day, but buildings all over the world are lit in green as a nod to the country that has given so much to the world. Drinking Irish whiskey today says as much about what the drinker believes as what they like to taste. And Ireland, like any country, has its problems, but brand Ireland is alive and kicking around the world. Reason number 3, incredible advertising. John Jameson wrestled a giant sea creature to save his precious whiskey. He put out a fire in Dublin by bursting a dam with his bare hands, saving his distillery and everyone in Ireland. And then, of course, everyone all over the country sings the parting glass on the way to a wedding or a funeral. But say what you will, Jameson and Tullamore Dew, the 2 best-selling Irish whiskey brands in the world, know how to advertise. And their award-winning ad campaigns over the past 10 years have found a receptive audience, a young audience, who buy into both the fantasy and the realities that these ads share. Jameson has deployed successful experiential marketing and advertising through their neighbourhood activation events throughout the US, and Tullamore has taken positions relevant to the public narrative on immigration and fitting in or blending in. Sometimes these are controversial, but these ads have always been relevant. Reason number 4 is global distribution. So while the US is the largest market, certainly for Irish whiskey, and understandably so, with every second American claiming Irish ancestry or asking if I know John, that black-haired fellow with the limp that lived in that village when I visited in 1984. You must know him. Well, outside of America, demand is growing too. And some of the smaller whiskey brands emerging from Ireland at the moment are finding that a large percentage of their sales now happen in mainland Europe, in Africa and Asia. Sometimes they're selling more there than in the Irish market. Global awareness of the product has opened doors, and Jameson and Pernod Ricard certainly are to thank for that. But as the Irish travel further afield, bringing the news of their whiskey with them, so too do additional channels open. Now, I'd like to claim sole responsibility for opening channels in Columbus, Ohio, where 5 bars now stock Jameson Black Barrel and Redbreast. I wouldn't call myself a hero, that's for others to say, but whiskey is certainly following similar routes that the Irish have travelled when they left Ireland 100 years ago, emigrating around the world. And reason number 5, quality and range. Growing up, Ireland had 2 TV channels. We had 4 Irish whiskies, Jameson, Powers, Bushmills and Paddy. Now there were a few more, no doubt, but those were what every bar stocked, and every house in Ireland had one of them. And as recently as 5 years ago in the US, Jameson was all that was stocked if you found an Irish whiskey at all in a bar. Last week, a dive bar I came across had 8 different Irish whiskies, including some premium brands. Today, there are more than 100 different Irish whiskies. And not only has the range grown, but quality has too. Innovations in production and a new generation of distillers and blenders entering the industry has created incredible innovation. I was asked a question on Instagram last week, which was, which Irish whiskies are the worst? And at the risk of opening up the comments section now to a deluge of suggestions, I'm going to suggest, as I answered then, there are no bad Irish whiskies, only different palates. So where does Irish whiskey go from here, and will this growth continue? Well, the Irish whiskey industry would like to think so. There are more than a dozen distilleries in some stage of development today. Bushmills in Northern Ireland is building 29 new maturation warehouses. Irish distillers are planning a brand new distillery, unconfirmed. And predictions are that Ireland will surpass 12 million cases a year by 2020. And that's a 20% increase in less than 2 years. What a time to be Irish. Of course, supply may prove to be a problem, despite these investments, as more and more of Asia wakes up to Irish whiskey. Millions of Chinese enter the middle class every year, and status symbols like premium spirits are deemed very important to this market. So we can expect to see a lot more demand from the East. Now, while meeting demand may be a challenge, I'm sure it's a problem we'd much rather be looking for answers for rather than trying to get people to drink the stuff. So, to all who have played a role in growing Ireland, the brand, and Irish whiskey at home and abroad, Sláinte. If you liked this episode, and sure why wouldn't you, isn't it about whiskey? Please subscribe so that I can foist my opinions upon you and slowly, subliminally and successfully convert you to the joys of Irish whiskey. You can subscribe to this episode on iTunes, SoundCloud and wherever you get your podcasts by simply searching for Stories and Sips. And of course you can see every episode in full Technicolor by subscribing on YouTube. And if you know a friend who might like Stories and Sips, then be a good friend to them and forward them a link so that they too can be converted to the Irish nectar. Sláinte.